Hello and welcome to the Turn 4 podcast. I am your host, Dan Maldonado. If this is your first time listening, welcome. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. This podcast comes from two lifelong fans of IndyCar and other forms of motorsport. Before we get started, let me introduce you to my co-host, the chipper, Tim Reiner. Hey, Timmy. Cheery
Hey
and
Dan.
chipper.
Hey, I'm excited. I'm glad to
Cheery
be
and
back
chipper
in
today,
the
Tim.
saddle here.
That's
I'm
right.
sorry.
I said you're cheery and chipper
Oh
today.
yeah, absolutely. I think you'll figure out throughout the show that I'm probably not as chipper as normal, but I'm all right, man. I'm good.
You got a little sun on your nose? Is that from being in Charlotte?
It could be, or it could just be the whiskey I drank. One of the two. I don't know what
Oh,
it is.
wow.
It could be the sun, or it could be the whiskey.
I know the
I'll
whiskey
let the
thing's a
viewers
joke, but
decide.
so it kind of leads me to a YouTube comment, right? About one of our super fans, Mark, our super fan, our original YouTube super fan, asking if you were drinking a beer on our last podcast. You were not. You were drinking a San Pellegrino.
Yes, I was. It
And
was
you don't
it
have
was
anything
water.
today. I'm worried about you now.
Yes, I don't have any beverage on my desk
I'm
at
worried
all,
about
which
it.
is very odd for the show. So hopefully, I don't have a coughing fit or something today, which
Yeah.
I don't plan on it, but we'll see.
Hey, we got a lot to talk about, but I have to ask, how was Charlotte Motor Speedway?
It was good. Southern hospitality, as I put in the
Of course.
tweet that went out, they were super nice and friendly, but it was cool to see. I didn't realize I was staying right down the street and I got off the expressway and it said Charlotte Motor Speedway, 1.9 miles. And I'm like, all right, here we
Gotta
go.
go.
Rental car. We're going over there. So we went and checked it out. But then I got to go to Hendrick Motorsport Park, and that is an amazing campus that they have
I
there.
bet.
Did you know, Dan, that on that campus is a GM Technical Center? The
Oh,
Charlotte version of it is there. They have a
that
tech
doesn't
center
surprise me.
there.
I think that's where the GM simulator is, right? The Chevy simulator.
Oh, probably. Yeah, that would make
Yeah.
total sense. And then Exalta, who's been a long sponsor, if it was DuPont back in the day, long sponsor of Hendrick, had their customer experience center there as well. And that's where we spent the day.
That's so great. That's so cool. Looked like a lot of
Yeah, it
fun.
was good.
So, welcome home.
Thank you. It was a short trip, but it was a good trip and a fun trip.
It is. That's great. We had a great weekend, and you're, of course, stayed going. I went to Des Moines, Iowa. That was fun, but not as exciting as Charlotte Motor Speedway. But I had a good time there. But we had a great weekend. Such an amazing event. City of Detroit, IndyCar, Penske Entertainment, all the volunteers who put this thing on did a fantastic job. Couldn't be happier with how that thing turned out. But first, Tim, we got breaking news today. As we're
Oh,
getting ready to start finalizing the notes for this podcast, we had breaking news this morning. Huge breaking news, as a matter of fact, in the world of IndyCar involving one of the series' more popular drivers, one Connor Daly, and Ed Carpenter Racing have agreed mutually to part ways effective immediately. Said Mr. Ed Carpenter, one of the most difficult season or decisions he's had to make. He cited increased investment in the team and a lack of results. Connor Daly released a statement saying, although we've mutually decided that it's in our best interest to take different paths, I'd like to thank ECR for the past 3.5 seasons. I'm grateful to everyone who has supported me, past, present, and into the future. I look forward to taking on the next opportunities that await, and I want to thank the fans for being with me on this ride.
so Dan, I could tell you were a little choked up trying to get that out today.
Yeah. Um, I wouldn't call this a surprise. The only surprise part of this, I would call it, is that it came 7 races into this, or after 7 races into the season. Normally, it would be like I kind of figured, like, wow, that's early to say that he wouldn't be coming back to ECR next year. But it was he ain't coming back to ECR today,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I was
Yeah.
surprised. But really, I mean, if you consider where we're at, right, with Connor Daly here, started his IndyCar career in 2013. He bounced around Coyne, AJ Foyt, Carlin, before landing part time with ECR in 2020, and then elevated to a full time role when the BitNow sponsorship came on board in 2022. That was last year for those doing the math. In that first year, full time, he placed 17th in the championship with a best finish of fifth. at the Indianapolis Grand Prix, not the 500. Presently, he is 20th in the driver's standings. The 2023 season highlighted by an eighth place finish at this past May's Indianapolis 500. Like I said, wouldn't call it a surprise, but I'm just kind of surprised that it happened immediately. Makes me wonder what else is happening. So, what we do know is that the number 20 will be at Road America. No driver named yet. I'm certain some will be screaming for RHR. I can't wait to listen to Trackside. But my guess is it'll be Linus Lundqvist, last year's Indy Lights champ, who has failed so far to get a ride in IndyCar this year. Tim, who would you want? If you don't have a name, that's fine. I'm going to ask you two questions. You can give me a name or you can give me a general idea. Who would you want to see in that car if you have somebody in mind? Or would you say you're okay with seeing a rookie in that car, or you definitely want to see a veteran in that car?
I'm of the opinion that that car is well funded with bit now, right? So I'm of the opinion you take a driver, several drivers, and you put them in throughout the rest of the season to evaluate drivers to see sort of where it plays out, kind of who you work with the best, who has the best input into the car, who helps the team as a whole and works well with Renus. I think that's what you do. I don't think you put one driver in for the rest of the season and have the long haul. I think you almost do what RLL has been doing and bringing different drivers in and testing them out. So that would be my sort of game plan. And that's why I would do it right now and do it effective immediately, because you're unsure of who you want in there for next season. I see this as almost like a year of building that team out, almost like when you talk football and it's like it's a year to really sort of build upon and then go into the next year and be really competitive. So that's what I would do. So I think the two you mentioned could go in there at some point, and then you look to Europe for other drivers, and even in the US for other drivers to come in and give it a go.
Let me give you a couple other things. So the first thing I would tell you is what I've seen on Twitter today is, oh, this is bull. He landed that BitNile sponsorship, and they've got to be upset about this, and somebody's going to have to pay. BitNile knows what's going on here before you and I know. That's for certain. Okay. The second thing is Zach Veach brought Gainbridge to IndyCar, lost his ride midseason. Gainbridge is still going strong in IndyCar.
Mm-hmm.
And Zach Veach, I think, is doing
the
two-seater rides. I saw him.
Yeah, and he's with Arrow.
Rides.
He's like a driver for Arrows, one of the backups, if you will.
So I'm sure that, Connor helped open those doors for BitNile to get in there and to be an IndyCar sponsor. But now that they're in there, they're probably just like any other business that's doing promotional and marketing and branding exercises. You got to look at the return, right? And part of the return in motorsports is how well are we performing? What are you, Ed Carpenter, doing with my money?
Mm-hmm. And who's to say it wasn't BitNile's sort of suggestion, right? Because
exactly.
Ed Carpenter says it's the hardest decision he's ever had to make, I think someone's putting the thumb on, right? And saying, you need to do something, right? This has got to be done. We're not happy with what's going on.
And for it to happen now, that's serious, right? For Ed to take Connor out of that car now, I think it's something serious. And I think that there's something else behind the scenes that could be playing into some of that decision as well.
Yeah, and I'd say it's just out of character from Ed, right? So I think there's other pressures that are making this decision happen.
Yep. In motorsports, go ahead.
And I just want to say, with how competitive this series is, it doesn't surprise me that this happened, and it wouldn't surprise me if it happened to other drivers too. I think there's other drivers in the series that if you got an open seat going that you're going to have next year, why not put some drivers in there to test it out, to get a feel for the rest of the season? The season's done. I know it makes sense to get in the top 20, and I think you're going to talk about that, right? Because of the money that's paid out. But at the end of the day, you got to make tough choices here, and you got to secure somebody to get in the seat that's going to be competitive.
Yeah, I mean, extremely valid point, because you don't have a lot of testing opportunities. So you could treat the balance of this year with that 20 car in a lot of ways as a testing opportunity if you do choose to put a rookie in that car. right?
Hmm.
So you have a little bit of an option there. You're right. This is probably the most competitive that IndyCar has been in quite some time. I mean, the championship points will probably tell you a different story, but by and large, every race weekend, it's tough and it's tight at the top, and
Hmm.
it's tight throughout the field. So if you're just not cutting it, and you know that this is what your ceiling is, then I don't know what you stand to gain by keeping somebody else in, by some keeping somebody in there 10 more races that you don't intend to keep beyond those 10 races.
Hmm.
So let me throw a name at you that I thought of right before I came down here. J.R. Hildebrand.
I think you put him in there for a few. If it's me, like he's on the list because he's going to bring some intellectual properties. He knows the tracks, he knows the cars, he's bright as can be, as from what I've understand, and so he's going to help the team. And so maybe it's not the rest of the season because maybe he's not your guy, but he's your guy for a few races. So you learn a few
Yeah.
things. Where have you struggled the most? Put him in the car at those tracks. Where do you want to test people out? Where you think your car's pretty good, you put other drivers in there, and so you go through this process. I think it's a matter of 3 to 4 drivers that get to sit in that seat. That's what I would do as an owner to figure out what's going on. How do we make it better? It could be an evaluation of Renus too, as you're going through this
Yep.
process too. And then you sort of go from there and you say, okay, we want to make sure that we're ready to go in 2024. We've come out of the box really bad this year. Our results show it, and we need to do better. We need to do better for our sponsor.
Yeah. J.R. Hildebrand, for all the reasons you mentioned, right? I know I always say, oh God, Ryan Hunter-Reay, here we go again, here we go again. I don't know that Ryan Hunter-Reay is known for being, for his technical prowess, right? For his setup genius or anything like that. And I think I would tell you that if given a choice between Ryan Hunter-Reay and J.R. Hildebrand, I would tell you that J.R. Hildebrand probably has a more technical sort of aptitude with IndyCar than a Ryan Hunter-Reay would, I think. And it's not to say that Ryan wouldn't jump in that car and do a really great job, and that Chevy wouldn't love to have him in that car. But you know, I think where ECR is at right now is they've got to evaluate some of the changes and some of the technical improvements that they think that they made in the off season, and some of the philosophy changes with the setups in those cars, and try to evaluate it differently, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think what we're going to see is, I think we're going to see an elevation in Renus's game here too. I think you'll
Yeah.
see a refreshed and renewed and re-energized Renus VK, because you're going to have a teammate in there that, let's face it, it's going to be fighting for that ride,
Yeah.
right? So he's going to be doing everything he possibly can to make a great impression and do what he can to get in that ride. So whoever it
Yep.
is, I would tell you that I think it's going to elevate Renus's game. And I
And
bring
I'd be
up Renus
shocked if
because,
it's,
good.
I'm just gonna say, I'd be shocked if they put one driver in for the rest of the season. I'd be shocked.
Yeah, yeah, it probably would be better because you're not beholden to anybody. From that perspective, you rotate people in. The
But
car's funded.
that's all I've seen on Twitter at this point is everybody thinks there's going to be one driver. Who's the driver going to be? Who's the driver? I think it's going to be
Yeah,
multiple.
yeah, yeah. We'll see, right? We'll find out soon enough. I bring up Renus because in motorsports, right, wrong, or otherwise, you're compared to your teammate. For the most part, you have the same data. You've got kind of the same car preparation and team preparation, and you've got the same equipment. At least you should.
Yep.
So, your best comparison is your teammate. So if you want to take a look at what that year looks like, Renus VK versus Connor Daly, Renus is 15th in the champions standings right now. Connor Daly is 20th, which goes back to your point, that winner's circle piece. Both of those cars are in that winner's circle payout. Okay, so
Yep.
it's not as if Connor is in danger of that. Back when Andretti made that Veach change, and he did it at the time that they did it, was to try to get that car into that top 22 spot, so they could get that payout, because the Andretti team is the only team that qualifies for 4 payouts. Nobody else does.
Mm-hmm.
It's 3 max for everyone else. So if you take a look at the average finish this year, this part kind of surprised me, right? Renus average finish this year is 16.2 with a best of 10th at this past Indy 500, just a few weeks ago. Connor average finish is 17.7, almost 18th place. He had an 8th place at Indy. I think, frankly, both of these drivers are probably on notice, right? And if they weren't, they probably ought to be. And the one that could be cut loose probably the easiest and the soonest was Connor. I want to keep saying or stop saying probably, but it's just what it looks like from where we sit. We're fans, we're not insiders. So this is what we say, right? But if you take a look at where you're at, Ray Hall, who by all accounts has had a miserable season, Ilott, who drives for one of the smallest teams who just had an expansion this year, Lundgaard, again, in that same Ray Hall boat, Ferrucci, AJ Foyt, they had a miraculous Indy 500, but otherwise, right, they're struggling. Marcus Armstrong, who didn't make 2 races this year, right, Texas and Indy, all those guys are ahead of Connor in the championship.
That's saying a lot right there, because all of these folks have had tough seasons, right? You look at everybody, and Marcus has not. Obviously, he's had a really good, strong season, but Ferrucci has been, that AJ Foyt Racing has not been very good, and so they've been struggling. RLL's had a hard time, and you've got Ray Hall and Lundgaard ahead of Connor. So
Graham got out of that car on Sunday and almost looked like he was ready to announce his retirement, right? I mean, he's had a miserable season. And Lundgaard has one shining moment in this entire season, but they're both ahead of Connor.
Yeah.
Hey, how about this? How about something ridiculous? How about we put Graham in the 20 and we put Connor in the 15?
Anything's possible, but anything's possible.
Well, that's all I got on that. We got to move on to Detroit. You got anything more you want to talk about on that?
No, I don't. I'm just curious. Well, maybe a little. I'm just curious if this sets a precedent in IndyCar that it's okay to let somebody go in the middle of the season and to do some other work. And I guess it'll see how this sort of turns out over the long haul with Ed Carpenter Racing in this number 20 seat. But there's others, like I said, and I'm not going to name any names, that you could say they're gone right now and they're gone right now. And you could put other drivers in there. So I'm just curious what this does overall and what the feel in the paddock is and how it sort of all washes out at the end of the day. So obviously more news to come before race weekend hits, and not this weekend, but the weekend after. So we'll see sort of how that goes.
Yeah, I don't, and also too, just to kind of tie this thing up, I don't see this being a major factor against the balance of the silly season, with Palou, with Ericsson, or anybody else's, contract who we think is up and who'll be looking for new rides, Devlin DeFrancesco probably, Jack Harvey. I don't know that this has any impact on any of that. I don't know that moving this out helps put Ed in a position to be able to sign any of these top free agents or these perceived top free agents by the end of this year anyway. So I think it's an evaluation period. I think you're right by saying that there's going to be multiple people in that car by the end of the year. It certainly makes sense to me, why you wouldn't do it that way.
Yeah.
Probably 2 or 3 drivers, right? To validate what you've done. So
correct.
Obviously, we're coming to this race review a little later than normal. We did have some bookend travel after being at Detroit this weekend, but we feel like we gave you a lot of great content. We had some live streaming there on our YouTube, which we've not been asked by IndyCar to take it down. So either they don't know or they don't care. And that's a little bit of a concern of ours. We both have shaking hands. We found that out while trying to hold our iPhones up.
I thought it was just you, but it's both of us.
Well, we know it's me for sure, but we know also you don't. You struggle with that as well. So.
It's kind of hard to hold the phone.
For 20 minutes,
15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's
but
tough.
Hey, we appreciate everybody hanging and waiting for us putting this podcast out. So we do appreciate it. Tim,
I do have to say that I like the hat. That's a great hat, Dan.
I love the hat.
Yeah, so
I know you sent it to me. I'm surprised you didn't buy one. This is 470.
I never found one, did I?
So I barely made it. Well, they had the other ones.
I don't think. Yeah,
ones we saw,
that's the one I wanted. Yeah. So you'll have to share it.
Yeah. Have you ever seen an IndyCar race or either IndyCar or Formula One downtown?
Yeah, I've seen an IndyCar race down there. Yeah. I don't remember what year it was, but I do remember going down. Yeah, when I was really young.
I have one experience. It was Formula One for sure, and it was like '83 or '84. Um, I was there with a friend of my mom's and her sister. That's a long story, but yeah, that's who I was with. We didn't stay long. We ended up going to
I was
Pablo
wondering where we were
Island.
going with that.
We left early and went to. It was somebody who my mom worked for, and
Hmm.
her sister, and they took me to the Grand Prix because they
Very
got tickets
nice. Yeah.
from the store. You know, obviously we got a lot of tickets from stuff at that store.
It was
So
my oldest brother and I that took the trip down there.
there you
I
go.
should
Yeah,
say up there
up there.
at
Yeah.
the time.
So
Yeah.
we left early and went to Pablo Island. So for those local, you know what Pablo is. Well, those
And for me,
local
this had
in
a
our
different
age group,
feel.
you know what Pablo is.
Yeah.
Good.
For me, this had a different feel, but that was so many years ago. I don't remember all of it, but I just felt like it was um, much more fan friendly than what it was in the past when we were
Sure.
there this past weekend.
Yeah. Um, there was a lot of talk about the track layout going into this. I was not as bullish on this as you were, but then even Alex Palou in his post qualifying press conference said that it was too short, it was too slow, and too narrow for IndyCar. He wanted to see a little bit more time added to it, right? Some more distance. And it wasn't helped
Hmm.
by all the red flags in the practice sessions. I don't remember there being a red flag in qualifying, but I could be wrong.
Hmm.
But I don't remember. Nonetheless, Timmy, the track did race well. It raced very
Yeah.
well.
And the other thing is, you
It
had
was
different
exciting.
opinions. I think it was Scott McLaughlin in the press conference said, if you got a fast car, you can come through the field. Like this is,
Yes,
you
exactly
can
right.
pass and you can come around. And they talked about how the track started to grip up after the first stint
Hmm.
in the race, and that produced a lot of passing, which I know we'll get to. So I was happy to hear that. I think that was Saturday when Scotty was
Hmm.
in the press
Defending it a little bit.
room.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was happy to hear that because based on the layout, I thought there were opportunities to pass, not just in one spot, but several spots, and it proved to be true.
Yeah, it proved to be true. Seven yellows, with the seventh coming from Rob stalling in the runoff, Rucci off as well. You will argue that it's really six because the start was waved off and that first yellow shouldn't start. But it is a yellow flag according to the original or the official box score. It is
It is,
seven.
but it's not. It's
Yeah.
not what type of
No,
yellow
it
that
wasn't.
everybody
Yeah.
was talking about.
Yeah.
This is the kind of yellow we're going to have, and
Yeah.
I think the other thing, and I
Or
know I sent
reds.
it
We didn't
out
even
was
have a red,
I
right? We
know,
didn't even have a red flag for this race. So
and the Indy
it
500
was
had three.
right.
So who would have ever put that odds to say Indy 500 is going to have three, and then Detroit's going to have zero red flags in the race? That's unheard of. So
Yeah.
overall, I think it's not that many yellows for the type of course you have, how tight it was. The drivers were respectful of each other, but there were still good battles going on. So I don't know how you go wrong with the layout and how you go wrong with the action on the track.
Yeah. I agree with you. So seven yellow flags, 32 laps, 32% of the race, or adjusted for Timmy's math, at 31% of the race run under yellow, which was really not a big deal. Everybody was expecting much, much worse than that,
Yes, they were. Yeah, that is
you know?
correct.
So consider this on track passes. Uh, I loved this stat. We were sitting in the media room for this. And I love this stat. So I got to try to find this during the during the other races that come up. On track passes, Colton Herta, 13. Will Power, 12 on track passes. And really, Tim, I thought that Power was going to win this. I really did. And I think he might have had he not gotten run into by Scott Dixon. You never really would know what happened there. He was never able to
Mhm.
get back to Pillow at that point. Marcus Armstrong, who you really like and you really liked going into this race, had 11 on track passes. Rossi, 10, and Rosenquist, 9. One of those 9 was on his teammate.
Yeah,
Could the track be
that's a lot of
longer?
passes.
Sure, it can, right? Will it be in 24? Probably not, right? You said you've heard recently Bud Danker said no.
Yeah, I heard he said no based on restrictions with roads and things of that sort and what they can and can't block off. I was listening to, or actually, I was reading an article from our local Channel 4, I think it was, and he said this was an interview after the event and talking about the event as a whole. And he said, no, the layout is the layout. We're restricted by X, Y, and Z. So whatever this stuff is, they can't extend it. Now, I would get, and part of it was if you take just think about it, or just hold on for a second here. But if you take turn one, you extend it out, it extends into a neighborhood. They can't have it in a neighborhood.
Right.
Could you break up the backstretch, which goes into turn three? Yeah, you could have some more corners back there, I think. But right now, there was some activation in that area. So some of the sponsors, Chevrolet and whatnot, all had their activations over there. That was free to anybody that wanted to show up to downtown. You could just walk up and go to the activation, and you could stand right along the track. So I think they did a great job. And so, yeah, I don't, based on what I heard from Bud, I'm going to say it's going to stay the same next year and just do some tweaking to the track.
Yeah, I think small tweaks. I think some repaving. I think you got to make it look a little nicer on TV. It doesn't look great. It's funny when we were talking to Richard, our buddy from Steps Towing and Recovery. He said, "See those wet spots? They look like wet spots. It's actually where they ground down the track a little bit, in some of those areas where they were, resurfacing it, so to speak. So it was
Yeah,
a
and
little
where
more
we're
level."
talking is between turns one and turn two, which
Hmm.
was very narrow. They had grinded that all out, and
Yeah,
you could see the back end of the cars, going sideways up that hill to turn two, and it was pretty impressive. It was just a matter of when they got on the gas in first gear, and then when they shifted to second gear, they both got out of shape. In both shifts areas, they got out of shape
because they were going
and
into the
almost tapped
only
the wall.
turn
Yeah,
on that track that was not a first gear turn, right? Turn two was
yeah,
a second gear turn. So,
the,
um,
the only second gear turn
yeah,
on the track.
I told you that when we were there that I felt like the racing was better than we've seen in the last two or the first two Nashville events.
Yeah,
And you were
I would
always
argue it was
positive
better
on this track.
than what we've seen on Belle Isle.
Oh, I wouldn't go that far, man.
Really?
Yes,
I
I
would.
wouldn't go that far, but I look,
Well, you just
I've
look
been
at the number
proven
of
wrong.
passes
Yeah,
you got 5 drivers, you got 55 passes
yeah, I know.
just
It's
among
wonderful.
5 drivers.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, it blew me away. And that's what I was going to say is I had no anticipation going into this for a wonderful race. I thought it was going to be a snoozer. It was really terrific. I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed it a lot. We had done a lot of walking over the weekend, and we watched this race from the press room up in the Renaissance Center. And I couldn't have been happier because we had tons of data around us. We had a big screen there, and it was very loud, and it was wonderful. But we got to see all that, and I thought it was we saw some of the beginning of the out there live, and then we went up to the media. But I thought
Yep.
it was great. I thought it was great. And then you mentioned the free areas. There was tons of free areas for people to watch, and the vantage points in those free areas were fantastic along Jefferson Avenue, where they had platforms set up and just areas where people stood. There was one company there, they didn't want anybody standing on their grass, so they literally had a security guard keeping people off the grass. I don't know. Let me tell you, thousands of people coming through there. I felt sorry for her, but she did her best job that she could, right? But that company's just gonna have to
Yeah,
get over it because
absolutely.
right now there's a drought going on in Michigan. As weird as that sounds, so your grass is gonna be crap anyway. So I don't know
Yeah.
what you're
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
save here, but
And those
um,
vantage points were really good. Dan, how far
yes.
would you say you were from the track
Oh,
in the free
feet.
areas?
Like, yeah, I mean feet. You were closer,
7, 8 feet off the track,
yeah, in those free
max.
areas than you were when you went back across the bridge. Okay, so those that watched the race, the bridge that you could see right in that stopping zone coming out of the main stretch, right? Turn
Yeah, in
three,
the hairpin. Yeah, yeah.
right? Coming right across that bridge, you went from general admission to free. And when you came back across to the GA, it wasn't even as good as what it was in the
The
free
free was
section
better.
unless you were
I
sitting in
know.
one of the grandstands or sitting up on
Yeah.
one of the platforms. It
Yeah,
was really it was really good.
and I love that. And we talked about this when we were there. It's like getting the casual viewer to come
Yes.
back next year, buy a ticket, get inside. It's what it was all about. It's about
Yeah.
growing the fan base. I think that's what the whole race was about. Getting people that normally wouldn't see it. And if you've ever been to Detroit, there's the River Walk, right? And the River
Hmm.
Walk is just that. It's like a
Right there
major
where Victory Circle was.
throughway
Yeah.
for people to bike, run, walk, whatever you want to call it. You could see the race for free right there too. And there's park benches right there, and there's trees, and so you weren't sitting out in the sun cooking, even though it was a beautiful day on Sunday. It was, and even at the podium. So think about the winner's circle. You got 3 drivers. Anybody could walk up to that and watch that. We were standing behind a guy, and I'm like, this guy has no shirt on. He's got his jogging shorts on. He's got his tennis shoes on.
Yes.
I'm like,
Yeah.
he was just out for a jog.
Right.
And next thing you know, he's watching the podium celebration.
Yeah.
I'm like,
He jogged
that's what it's
himself into a
about.
podium.
Bringing the
Yeah.
fans.
Yeah.
Creating new
was great.
fans, and that's what they did.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. I thought it was great. Can't wait to see it next year. You know, because
Yeah,
it'll be
me
even
neither.
better, and they'll make improvements. You know what I did hear on the broadcast when I came home and watched it on TV was that big chalet behind, at the pits is the one that they use for that Waste Management Open in Phoenix.
Oh,
the
really?
golf
I didn't
event
know
there.
that.
Yeah, yeah, they rented that from
That's
them,
funny.
brought that in and set that up, and that's where, of course,
Wow.
Flavor Flav was when Kevin Lee
Yeah,
went up.
Flavor Flav and
Flav-
everybody else. They were all in there. Yep.
Flav
It was a
blew
nice
up.
structure. It was very well
Yeah.
put together. It provided views of the paddock, the front straight, if you want to call it the front straight. That's the only thing that was kind of weird, is that all the restarts took place on the back straight, and just the checkered flag was on the front straight. So I don't know if that caused confusion for the average fan to go, oh, the race is over. That's not where they had the green flag the whole time. That's not where they did all the restarts. So that was a little interesting, but
Unusual
I think it works.
in general.
That front straightaway is so short that you had to do it on that back straight. So good call by Penske and the group.
Unusual in general to the casual fan, but not unprecedented for IndyCar, because they do something similar at Mid-Ohio.
Yeah, they do it at Mid-Ohio. But restarts are on the front. That's what was the
you're right about
interesting
that
part to me.
You ready to get into Power 4?
I guess, unless there's any other overall experiences. I do want to say one more thing, because I think it's important for the fans to know.
Go ahead.
And for IndyCar fans to know, is that the General Motors world headquarters is open to anybody to walk through there. And so that was the cool thing. If you were out there, it's a hot day. Let's talk about Saturday, maybe even Friday. It was really warm here. You could go in the Renaissance Center, cool off. The restaurants were still open inside of there, at least some of them, not all of them. You could see the exhibits inside the Renaissance Center. It was all about the experience, in my opinion. And the race obviously was obviously important to us, but it's all about bringing people down and about having that good sort of fan experience. And I think the other thing you should talk about, I want you to talk about this, Dan, is driver introductions.
Oh, that was fantastic, right? I mean, they brought them in, took them down into what's called Hart Plaza, took them out onto the stage. It was real close. The fans were on both sides. They were slapping hands and fist bumps and stopping occasionally to sign autographs and take pictures and things. It was really fantastic. I mean, to have that level of engagement.
It was almost like a red carpet.
Yes, you don't ever get that level of engagement in any other top tier motorsport. That it just doesn't exist, right? Graham came down. Yep. I mean, everybody, Willpower came down with Flav. Everybody was out there. They were throwing towels into the
David
crowd.
Malukas.
Yes, David Malukas is living the best life, right? Nobody worked the crowd better than little Dave.
Yep, he was pretty awesome.
Yeah,
running up and down the red carpet area. I'll call it a red carpet area.
Yeah,
hands out both sides and giving everybody high fives, low fives,
running like little slow jog, kind of
stopping to take pictures with. Yeah, totally. Yeah,
it was great.
So that's the other thing I think we should mention about the experience.
Yeah,
we could probably go on the whole show talking about experiences, but those are the major ones, I think.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Oh, let's talk about one more thing, because I'm so excited about this event. Let's talk about the parking structures and just being able to. Yeah. Is there more stuff at the end that I'm not really like talking about?
No, go ahead.
The parking structure. Let's talk about the parking structure.
You and I were
being able to go up in the parking structures
was free,
way up,
right?
8 stories, 9 stories.
Yep.
Free.
We're on the 8th floor, looking down into turn 1, pit out, and into turn 1 from the 8th level. We were in the shade, which was awesome, and we got to see them. It was practice, and we got to see qualifying through there. And it was
the breeze coming off of the Detroit River and the lake.
Yeah.
Amazing. It was Saturday, super hot. Get in there and you can just watch the race. Obviously you're standing, but you're standing right on it was beautiful views. There's some great photos we took from there that we posted. A very different view of an overhead shot. I'm saying when you're watching it, like an overhead look at the car and watching them wheel the car through and go through the process. So
Yeah.
if I took any of your mojo out of the later half of the show, I think it's
No,
important
no.
to talk
Yeah.
about.
No, what I will say though is, we come back to the inevitable comparison to Belial is Belial doesn't afford you any of that. Right? Doesn't afford you that many
There was
free
none.
areas, doesn't give you kind of those vantages that we were able to find that gave you a different view of the on-track
Mm-hmm.
activity that we were able to find
Doesn't
in
get you into
Detroit.
the world headquarters where you can
Yep.
cool off if you need to cool off. And it's, it's the spot on, spot on. I think it was a great fan experience. Anybody that has doubts about coming to Detroit and watching the race, I say come, and heck, don't even buy a ticket unless they decide to lock
Yeah.
it down. We'll let you know on Friday of next year. But I don't think they're going to lock it down. I think it's the right way to do it.
And it was a sellout. We know the guy who bought the last ticket. The
We
last
do.
available
I bought it. I
grandstand
still have
ticket.
it.
There was one.
Never got
Tim
used,
went. That's
unfortunately.
right. Tim went to the ticket office and they said, "We have one." But there was something that prevented them from doing that transaction. So they asked you to come back and you came
Yep.
back and they were like, "Oh, yeah, we're ready for you." It was the last grandstand seat available for the 2023 Detroit Grand Prix.
Yeah. And GA
Yep.
was already sold out. It was the last ticket of the event. I got it right here.
Yeah. So awesome.
It is so
Yep.
awesome.
So awesome. Um, Timmy, we got to get into this Power Four.
All right, let's do it.
Chip Ganassi Racing, first place, Alex Palou. Timmy, is Alex Palou unstoppable?
Yes.
Oh, just a definitive yes. I like it.
Yes. I've been thinking about this, and
Yeah.
I think he is. He's one prone not to make errors, right? So he's not
Yeah.
going to
Very
make
clean.
errors. He's
Yep.
got, seems like the team's coming around with him. He's coming around with them, and he's on it, man. He's good.
Yep.
Wow.
51
Impressive drive.
points. 51 points ahead of his teammate who's in second place. He has a masterful racecraft. And Tim, I didn't realize this was his first win on a street course.
I didn't either. We heard about it, of course, so we knew when it happened, but
yeah, in contention on ovals. I mean, look out on road courses, and now street.
man,
Where's the deficiency?
yeah, I don't see one at all. I don't see any weaknesses with the team. I don't see any weaknesses with him. It's come together well, and it's come together after a tumultuous year last year, just with dynamic team dynamics. And you know what he went through with Arrow and so on and so forth. So we'll see what happens with them. But it was, if you look at it, what he led 71 laps. He led a
Yep.
74 laps, quite a bit for such a competitive race. You didn't know who was going to win. He did lead a lot of the laps for sure. That's 74%, by the way, of the laps. But you know, it was interesting, and I know we'll probably get this, but Power, who was, charging and going, I think it's a game of how do you save tires, how do you save a little fuel, and someone else going after you is kind of how Power got up to him. And then it seemed like Pelot after that said, you know what, it's time to work hard. But even in the press conference, he said, Will was tough. He was the guy that I had to worry about the whole time. And he was a little bit of a pest, I think, something like that, but in a polite way, just saying he was the guy that I was worried about in order to take this win away from me, but he didn't.
Yeah, you can watch his press conference on our YouTube channel because we streamed it and it's on there. And I'm gonna poorly paraphrase what he said, but they did ask him this similar question, right? Is do you feel pretty good? Who are you worried about? And he listed a bunch of names, right? Will Power, Scott Dixon, Marcus Erickson, Pato Award. He still listed a bunch of names,
He
which
did.
I think that
And
has
then he
to be your
asked you,
mindset, right?
yeah. And I think he said, do you want me to continue? Because he's like,
Yeah,
everybody's
exactly.
like
Yeah,
in
yep,
contention here. Right. So
yep.
in his mind, he doesn't feel like he's got it wrapped up, and there's a lot of racing to go. Right. But I
Tons.
think he's
He's a full race
definitely
win ahead of
there.
second place.
Yeah. And just think for a second. I think the only way you take him out of a contention is you hit him in pit lane. You look at the last three races.
Is that a shot at Renus? Come on,
It
man.
is a shot at Renus. Not really. It's just what do you do to stop him, right? You run into him, I guess, because you look at the GMR Grand Prix, he wins.
Yeah.
Wins from third place. He didn't have the pole, but had a magnificent race. Indy, he was in the perfect spot to win the Indy 500. You know, he was doing well. He was up in the top 2, 3, whatever it was, until the incident, and then drove back through the field in order to get a good place finish.
Yep.
And then in Detroit, he wins from the pole. I don't know how you cannot say, is he unstoppable when you look at that?
Yeah, totally unstoppable.
Yeah.
Scott Dixon finishes 4th place. Dixie was scrappy in this race. I like a scrappy Dixon because I think he's still got it. He's been around a long time. He's very smart, right? Which makes him super scary out there if you see him in your mirrors. Although you're going to see an orange car back there no matter what, whoever you are, because there's a lot of them these days. The fact that he was in contention, though, on this track is no surprise. If you remember, he won at Toronto and he won at Nashville last year. So bumpy and tight. Dixie likes bumpy and tight. The other thing, too, is Dixon doesn't complain. Like, you never heard any complaints or, track chatter or anything out of Scott Dixon on any of those, broadcasts or anytime he had a mic in front of him.
He came out of character last year, which we've already talked about in previous episodes. But other than that, no, he's always focused and chomping at the bit to get up front and take a victory.
Yeah. 8th place, Marcus Armstrong, the new Marcus. You wanted to pick Marcus as your winner here. You want to tell me about that?
I did. He was my dark horse, but wanted to be my overall pick. And the reason for that is everybody was new to this course. And so he didn't have the learning curve. He had the same learning curve as everybody else going into it. So I thought he had a good shot at it. And even it being a rough and tight course, maybe that was the one thing that made me a little reserved about it, because I know he's not a big guy. But I think, just from going into the event and not having to learn something that everybody already knows, that would give him the edge. He still had a great race, 8th place. You can't, he beat his teammate, the other Marcus.
Yeah, he did. Who finished 9th, right? He finished right behind him. Not a bad finish, and kind of lucky based on the fact that he had a 3-stop race versus the leaders who all made 2 stops. He seemed to struggle a little bit with tires. I think he just couldn't keep them at the same level that clearly his teammate could, or any of his teammates could, for that matter.
Yep.
Penske's our power
overall
2.
for Chip Ganassi, all over, good.
Chip likes winners.
Yeah, everybody in the top 10.
Yeah.
On a street course, bumpy, concrete walls everywhere. You're expecting DNFs. Everybody's in the top 10.
Yep, everyone. Will Power finishes 2nd. Very nice finish for Power, who, like I said earlier, I expected to win this race based on how he started it. It certainly wasn't our pick. Both you and I both picked McLaughlin to pull and win. But the way Will was coming through that field, it looked to me like he was the only one that had anything for Palou. Will had 12 on-track passes. He led 14 laps. And here just kind of underscores what I was saying. He had a 9-second deficit at one point to Palou, and he closed to within 2 seconds. That was Will starting on primaries, Palou starting on the alternate tires. And when Will's primaries came in, he was all over Palou. He was all over Palou.
He was.
On a track that you can't pass. 7th place for our pick, Scott McLaughlin. I don't know that anyone can complain about a 7th place finish, but I'm certain the 2nd place start for Scott gave him higher hopes. Like others, I think he struggled with tires. He did have a spirited battle at one point when he coming out of the pits and battling with Scott Dixon. Scotty Mack on cold tires, and he was giving it to the 6-time champ, which was really fun to see. 10th place goes to Newgarden, tired from his Indy 500 tour. I'm sure 10th place wasn't what the Indy champ was looking for. I heard him on a podcast prior to this saying that he wanted to kind of do away with the Indy hangover, at the race in Detroit. But I don't know if this necessarily does away with the Indy hangover. I would take 10th. He needs to string together, though, some really quality finishes. What quality looks like, I would say 10th or better, because he's got a couple of, really bad finishes. He's got a 17th place and a 15th place earlier this year, and that's really what's kind of suppressed his rise up in the championship standings. We're going to talk about championship standings at the end of this, but what's helping him here is just some bonehead mistakes by, Award. But
Yeah. Yeah.
he
And,
goes into Road
go ahead.
America, which he won last year, so he has feel pretty good about that. Plus, he gets a couple of weeks of rest, so for that crew and everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's always that Indy hangover. I think Newgarden might have the best finish out of the latest Indy 500 winners in the following race. It's
Hmm.
just there's a lot of media, there's a lot that's going on. It's tough to refocus, and he did a good job. And granted, you got to give it to Penske too. All drivers in the top 10
Yep. Yeah.
on a
Yeah. He
track
did
that's
get.
too narrow, too
Yeah.
bumpy. I'm going to repeat myself,
Right.
and prone to accidents.
Yeah. And he could have been hampered a little bit, maybe a ninth or maybe an eighth, but he had it looked like just fueling issues on some stops where they were having trouble getting the fuel hooked up right because that fueler was manhandling that fuel hose. So it could have been something along that line. Arrow McLaren, power third. I have more dialogue written for this than I do for 1 and 2. But man, is there a lot to talk about
There's
here.
reason for it though. There was a lot
Yeah,
of action
yeah,
between teammates,
exactly.
and I'm assuming that's why there's all the
Yes.
text.
Third place, Felix Rosenquist, who I wanted to buy his jersey this weekend, but no jersey to be found. But we'll talk about that in the rundown here. Rossi, fifth place, and Award 26th. I kind of alluded to it. Tim, it was an interesting race for this team, one that was surely going to happen at one point, right? At some point during the season. I think that if you have 3 top running cars, and indeed they do have 3 top running cars, you're bound to step on someone's toe at some point. And we do know that there was some toe stepping between Felix and Rossi. I don't think it was inappropriate. I don't think it was something wrong. I don't know that even racing that hard amongst teammates that there was a problem with that. Did you see any problems with that?
Not a single one. I think it was clean battles, squeezing a little bit, which is okay. But at the end of the day, you got to fight with each other. I think it goes right to your point that you made earlier, that you're always compared to your teammates because you're in the same equipment,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just the way racing is sort of judged, right? If the team is doing well, then it's all against you and your teammates when it comes to who's our best overall driver in the team.
Yeah. Rossi did his best to address the question, the situation after the race. He said, we're going to discuss it internally. Rosenquist, who finished on podium, so he was in the press conference afterward, and Felix is a pro. Felix had a great response to that. Said Rossi, you know, raced him hard on the way in to the turn, and he raced him hard on the way out. So,
Mm-hmm.
maybe Rossi felt that he was stronger than Felix on entry, and maybe Felix felt that he was stronger than Rossi on exit, and he knew that. So both of them were going to take advantage of their strengths, and I think both of them did. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I said to you during this race, and it could just be because he looks like a young man, right? And he's a smaller guy and everything else. I think sometimes that Felix might get tired of being like this little brother guy within the team,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because all the fanfare is Pato, all the fanfare is Rossi coming to that team. And well, Felix's seat's kind of warm. We don't know what's going to happen to Felix when Pillow comes, which I don't buy anymore either. But what's going to happen there? And I think he's racing for a seat. He's racing for his future, but he still did it appropriately. I don't think he did anything wrong. And this is maybe the first, right? We could say this was the first time, and it can be the last.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure. So
I agree.
Felix, 31 years old, by the way. He told us that in that press conference, right? When we had that crazy talk about the music that
Flavor
Will Power
Flav.
likes. Yeah. 31 years old. He's been driving in different formulas since 2007. So, I mean, he's a pro, and I think he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. Didn't see anything wrong. Got to talk about Award. I mentioned during the Long Beach race that I felt Pato lost his composure. He bounced off a lot of people in that race, including one Scott Dixon. He was unapologetic about it, borderline indignant about it. Same with his comments after the 500, after he crashed out of the 500. He said, next
Hmm.
time he, which is Ericsson, comes with me, right? Tim, Pato is so talented. He's built a hell of a brand in IndyCar, sells a lot of merchandise, has a lot of following. You see that shirt everywhere, right? But I feel
Hmm.
like he's either starting to show his true colors, which I hope is not the case, or he's just starting to grow frustrated in his place on this grid right now, which is substantial. I don't know. He was third place coming into this race.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. He's in contention in damn near every race weekend. Why is he pressing like this? It makes no sense to me at all. Of course, he had the pit stop issue, which we thought was a drive shaft, but turned out to be a loose wheel. If you look at the replay right before he crashes out, it looks like Ferrucci knew he was going to crash and kind of checked up a bit, right? So here you have a
I just got out of
guy,
the way.
yeah, who's got this reputation for just being completely wild and unhinged and everything else. And he saw a manic Pato come through there and thought, I'm just going to get out of his way because he's gonna wreck this thing. And it's
Hmm.
either he was trying to stay, from going a lap down, which I understand. I I guess I thought he was a lap down at that point, but it isn't what he did. Ferrucci saw him getting ready to knock the wall down, and he did. So he's got to get his composure back, um, and he has to try to be, I think, a little bit more humble because even in
Yeah.
this press conference, he came out, didn't apologize, didn't say he made a mistake, which he did. Right?
Yep.
That seems to be universal at this
That's
point.
on him. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. He couldn't acknowledge it, and I just it's a weird slide for me with Pato Award, and that's a lot that I said. So I'm going to give you a chance. Thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just say that I think he was he was a lap down, almost 2 laps down when he made the move and hit the wall. So I think he was thinking if I can stay 1 lap down, I can potentially get my other lap back and get back on the lead lap. But
Yep.
his composure isn't there. It's either all or nothing. And I think it has to do with maturing throughout. You got to mature a little more, and I got to take it. Look how long it took Power, right? Power was the same. I
Yeah.
don't want to say the same way, but Power was of the sort of. I'm going to try to get everything out of this car, and I don't. If it's not there, it's going to wreck, or I'm going to be out of the race. And I think that's where you have a Ward right now, and that's sort of where he's at. And I think the team just needs to sit him down, and he needs to just evaluate and look back at what he's done so far this season. And when you're going to have missteps, right? This is a long season. You're going to have missteps. You're going to have things that are out of your control that go wrong, and you got to roll with the punches and move through it. Now, if he comes back and he's able to, I'm just talking about the race. If he was able to, not make that move and stay just a lap down, maybe there's a chance to do something. Instead, you just throw it away and you come away with a 26th place finish, which
Yep.
pays absolutely nothing in points. And so you start to tumble down the ladder here. So not a good position to be in. And I think you gotta take blame for that. You gotta say and own up to it and go, I made the mistake. Yeah, we had an issue on pit road, but I need to race smarter.
Yeah, he does. I think Road America is a good opportunity for him. I think
Yeah,
going
for
into
sure.
Road America will be a good opportunity for him and that team. But he has to sort of take a breath at this point
Yeah.
because, like you said, he threw away a finish. It wasn't going to be a top five finish, but it wasn't going to be second from last either.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
but he threw away some form of finish, and just the way he's been sort of comporting himself, right, over the
Yeah.
last few races is just puzzling to me because you have a
Yep.
top three championship situation going on. And with Pelot racing the way that he's racing, you can't afford to make mistakes like this.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I agree. I agree with all that. And can I have a little Indy 500 hangover right now? You okay
I
with
think
that,
they all
Dan?
do. Yeah,
No, can I have one? Can I have one? My own.
absolutely. You can. Yeah.
So I'm looking at, they got 3 drivers listed. I missed not seeing Tony Kanon's name as one of the drivers there, which
Oh,
leads me back to Ed Carpenter Racing.
I don't think that's likely.
All right,
I
we'll
really
see.
don't. I don't think that's likely. And I don't. I think that Tony's fast, but I don't think Tony's also a technical kind of setup
But
driver
maybe you
either.
need help on some of the ovals. Maybe he comes in for that.
All
I
right.
don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Maybe. Because who do you get, right? J.R. Hildebrand would be qualified, for ovals. He would definitely be somebody. RHR would definitely be somebody you'd put in that car for an oval,
Yeah. Yeah.
for sure.
Who
And
knows?
that the Carpenter cars are going to be good on ovals.
Yeah, they should be, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. They will be.
Historically,
So,
they have been.
yep. Andretti, fourth place, Power Four here. Sixth place for Kirkwood, which is nothing short of amazing. I mean, he started this race by giving a piggyback ride to Callum Ilott into turn three.
Yeah.
Had significant wing damage. Had to stop there. Sixth place finish, Tim, for Kyle Kirkwood, who was upside down just a week before. He had 4 stops in this race, which is just amazing that he's able to
That's a
salvage
lot.
a sixth place finish out of this.
Mm-hmm. This is a
Right?
great run, right?
Wonderful.
He's got
Yeah,
swagger
terrific.
to him. I'll just say he's got swagger. He's good. Uh, he's pretty personable too. He was in one of the press
Yeah.
conferences talking about his
Yep.
car and the team, and um, I wouldn't call it arrogance. I just think he he's he's good at racing. He talks like he's good at racing, and then he goes to the track and he can prove it too. So I like him. I
Occasionally.
like occasionally. It's this was a perfect example of driving through the field and
Yep.
doing a great job after having that
Yeah.
altercation. If that doesn't happen, he's with Power and he's with Pillow, right? He's up
Yeah.
there battling. I think you have a completely different sort of top three and how that sort of plays out. But
Yeah.
great run by
Our
Kirkwood.
friend our friend Spencer and webmaster Spencer text or no tweeted, and I think I responded to it, right? He said he expects Cal Kirkwood to be a Penske driver at some point in his career. And I said, no, he's too wrecky. And I think he said that Newgarden was too. And
Yeah.
I am in no position to argue with Spencer because he knows he's a
Yeah.
savant when it comes to
Yeah.
this history. But that kind of made me think twice. Maybe you're right.
Yeah. You look at this incident, it's not his fault. This is
No,
one
this
that's
one's
not his
certainly not.
fault.
Yeah.
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 So 11th place, Colton Herta. Colton couldn't come to grips with this track until Sunday, right? He was at or near the bottom in all of the sessions. He started 24th, but he has 13 on track passes to get to salvage this 11th place finish. He is 9th in the championship, but I would say he's underperforming the team right now. Would you agree with that?
Ooh. I don't know if I would agree with that. Maybe. Oh,
I would
let
say
me.
that because Grosjean has his issues, but Grosjean has been in contention since the start of the season. Kirkwood has a win this season and has been in contention.
Yeah, but
And I don't know that Herta has been. I wouldn't say
he's
that
the
Herta's
top
been in
Andretti car when
contention.
you look at points.
This is true, but underperforming, meaning as good as those other cars have looked on those week, Kirkwood is wrecky. So is Grosjean. Colton is
Point.
not wrecky, but he's flat. And it
He has
just
been
looks to me
wrecky.
like it's just flat to me,
Is
right?
wrecky a
His
word?
season.
We're talking about being wrecky.
No, wrecky's not a word at all. I made it. It's my show.
You gotta. When you say Herta's not wrecky, I think of Nashville and putting it in the wall and taking himself
Yeah.
out of the race when he could have won that. So I would say all the drivers are sort of prone to being wrecky on the Andretti squad, and I think that's the problem. You don't have just a consistent
Right.
driver that will take what he gets and come out of the day and feeling okay with it and being, fourth, fifth in the championship or whatever it might be. If you do that, I think any of these drivers could be there easily, even in the top, close to pushing number 3 if they don't have all these wrecks.
Right. Speaking of wrecky, Devlin DeFrancesco had a wreck during the one of practice sessions in Detroit here. He did rebound. He finished 12th, which is really a good finish for him. It's his best finish on the season, which is 2 weeks in a row now because his last best finish was at Indianapolis, which was 13th. I posted pictures of that team thrashing to get that car put back together. They had to decal some front wings and start getting front wing assemblies ready for the next sessions. And for
which
the
was
race and
qualifying.
everything. Yeah.
Yep.
DeFrancesco's racing for his future. Could be
Turning point
too
with
little too
Devlin.
late, but I think,
Yeah,
what's
what are you
that?
saying here? What are you
I
saying with the two?
I think it's likely
But
that Devlin is going to be finding him or
yeah,
knocking on doors after this season.
yeah.
And I think Devlin
13th,
knows it.
12th. Well, if you got a good run going right now, that it looks good. I guess we'll
Could
see what
change some
happens
minds.
going into Road America.
But if you got money and you've got a Marcus Ericsson out there, why not?
Yeah, we'll
He's not
see.
wrecky.
Well, he's kind of wrecky.
And he would fit in with the,
Yeah.
with the culture of those teams. So 24th place. Oh, wrecky. Roman Grosjean. I always get these texts from Gacker. Gacker can, like, if there was a betting category on one of these betting apps or whatever, Gacker would be betting on the over under how many laps that Grosjean is going to run before he wrecks. So I love it. So this one's making me scratch my head a bit. Apparently, it wasn't a Grosjean wrecky event, right? It wasn't a crash. It was a rear suspension failure that preceded the crash or caused the crash. And he's been arguing, he being Grosjean, been arguing with people on Twitter, which you should never do because you're never going to win that. And that's his story, and he's sticking with it, right? He started
And I
third
like it,
again
but
in contention, right? But like McLaughlin, I don't think he had much in the way of race pace. He is in a contract year. That's very knowledgeable, right? We've talked about that on broadcasts. I've heard about it on other podcasts and things. I think he's got to get it together if he wants to continue in this ride. And I think if he wants to continue to be paid in this ride, I think he's got to get it together. There's a
I
win
don't.
in him this season, Tim. I feel
That's
strongly
what
about
you
that.
keep telling me.
There is a
You had
win
me
in him
believing.
this season. I still believe
Okay.
that. But it could be the Newgarden principle, right? Now I'm throwing a bunch of people under the bus. Newgarden has been kind of feast or famine as well, right?
Hmm.
Win 15th, win 10th, win 17th, kind of thing like that. So it's
Yeah.
like that's Grosjean. Grosjean's always in contention, but something always takes him out. We gave him a free
Yeah.
pass on that St. Pete thing. Well, it's kind of McLaughlin raced him too hard. They shouldn't have been doing that. And, this would have been Grosjean's race to win. We gave him a pass.
We
Don't know
did.
about the rest of this. Right? He was all
Yeah.
over the shop in Texas, took himself out.
Hmm.
Barber
Indy took himself out in
burned
two.
up his
Yeah.
tires. Indy took
Yeah.
himself out
Yeah.
again. Detroit took himself out.
He did. And I just wonder if the suspension failed. Like, did you smack the wall with the rear end coming out of one of those
Right.
corners? Because everybody
Exactly.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what really, like, when I never
Yeah.
saw it. So I'm not saying that's what
Yeah.
happened, but you just wonder, no one else's suspension just happened to break. So
Yep.
did you touch it a little bit and then that caused it to weaken and then over time it
Yep.
broke? Who knows? Um,
What I will say
yeah, I
here.
don't think he's in. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I don't think he's in a position to lose his seat. I think you need some stability
Yeah.
at Andretti Autosport. I think you're going to have turnover with DeFrancesco. You just brought Kirkwood in this year. I think you need to have a little bit of stability. Yeah, you change out potentially the one driver. I don't think you do two seats and go through that mess. I don't think it makes any sense. But
But I
so I
also
think he's safe. I think it's just a matter of getting it together, getting through the race, and coming up with some good results.
I think you need some personality there too, and he brings you that.
He does,
Right.
and he brings you international flavor. Like he
Kirkwood's
brings you a
fine.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kirkwood's fine.
yeah. I don't think he's going anywhere.
Herta's fine. I think DeFrancesco's seat is up for bid somewhere. Though I think Michael would pay to put Ericsson in that seat, but that's not the most dynamic personality either. So I think Grosjean definitely brings, the international appeal. He's in the DHL car. A lot of these things line up. But with Andretti's rebound this year, I think, one or two of those seats would definitely be desirable. And it would be desirable for someone like, a Callum Ilott, who's been making a lot of lemonade at Hunkos Hollander, Ericsson, who I've mentioned several times, or David Malukas.
Yeah. I don't see it, but maybe you're reading something that I'm not. that far down the line on yet.
Yeah. All right. Power
And
fifth.
man, he's got abs for days. Gotta like that for the
Yeah.
team.
Remember when we saw him walking toward us, we could see his abs literally through that fire suit thing, that
Yeah,
that under thing. Power fifth, you
I
want to go
felt
first?
really self-conscious. Yeah, I think I go first this
I
time,
didn't,
right?
because I'm sure I can pick up my bike faster and easier than he can, and I could probably still take him in arm wrestling.
Right,
But he's
right.
got
I'm with
everything
you.
else,
Yeah, my power
including a
fifth.
Lamborghini.
This might not be any surprise to you, including the Lamborghini. This might not be any surprise to you, but my power fifth team is a team, but not a team that was on track. It was the team that put on the event, Penske Entertainment, for
Yay!
putting on such a wonderful event. That is my team. Power five ranking. I thought the event was amazing. I know their track could use some improvements, but overall, the fan experience was top notch. Um, they went all out, they went all in. First year event. Bud Danker was everywhere.
Yeah,
He was,
I talked about
it
yeah,
was,
I talked about on Friday.
yeah, it was amazing. So my hat goes to them, and for those reasons that we talked about at the beginning of the show, and all the activations and stuff that happened, and what they put together was a great event, and not just a race.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you there. Though it isn't who I picked. I did pick Junko's Hollinger Racing, even though Shank with Simon Pagenaud was next up on the grid.
Yeah.
I skipped over that because I feel like, and I'm going to tell you a reason why. So Canapino finished 14th. He had a blocking penalty and had to give up the spot, which I think is fine. He's still new in this series. He's a rookie. This is his seventh race in IndyCar. He'll now know where the margins are, right?
Yep.
Callum finished 27th. Like I said, he had the issue, going deep into turn 3 and the wrong side of that track. The further right you went, there was a bump there, which kind of really had to be careful on brakes, cold tires, everything else, and that's just kind of what I think caught Callum out. Finishing 7th dead last. So why? And the reason why I'll say this is because this team expanded to two cars this year, okay, and continues to outperform Shank, Rahal Lennerman Lanigan, Coyne this year, which has taken a huge step back, Ed Carpenter Racing, and Foyt. And I've heard Callum Ilott on a podcast say they don't have simulator support. They don't run the simulators. He said it during one of the Peacock broadcasts that I
Mm-hmm.
watched. They did never run it on a simulator. They're
Mm-hmm.
coming in here about as cold as you can come in here, and they are outperforming teams that seemingly have more budget, seemingly have more resources as far as technical resources are concerned, and drivers who are notable drivers. Simon Pagenaud, Graham Rahal, David Malukas, who was the darling last year, Renus VK, Connor Daly, Santino Ferrucci, and they're outperforming these guys. So for me, anytime I look at it, I'll tell you that JHR is my power fifth team because they continue to do more with less. And you and I, we talked about it when we were walking the paddock area. The improvement and the change between their paddock setup this year and what it was last year on track looks very professional. It looks big team, but we know that they still have personnel, deficiencies there compared to other teams on the grid. The
Mm-hmm.
last thing I'll say to here is I've also heard Callum Ilott say they're running a standard damper. And none of these other teams that I just referenced are running a standard damper.
Yeah. So just so I'm clear, your points are all great, and I agree 100%. I didn't choose them just because of Ilott's finish, but you laid it out of why they should be, even with what Ilott did in the race. Um, does that
It
make
was
them the fifth
Canapino
best
pulling them
team,
together.
Dan, based on what you said? Or is there somebody else in
Um,
there?
I don't know. That's
Okay.
really hard. I think it's hard to even just say who's the third or fourth best team. Because I would
Yeah.
say that the best team in IndyCar right now is Chip Ganassi. And I would tell you that it's Penske, it's probably Arrow. just by virtue
Andretti.
of the Andretti
Yeah.
guys just can't keep it between the lines.
Yeah. I'm just saying, based on your list, you're saying they're outperforming Meyer Shank, AJ Foyt, Coin, like all the way down. And so if I RL, if I put them in that
So
position,
one of those guys
that's
should be
their
fifth.
fifth.
Yeah, it should be
They're
like a
fifth then.
clear
Yeah.
fifth, right? Like
Yeah.
Shank should be a clear fifth, or Rahal certainly should be a clear fifth or
Yeah.
fourth,
Yeah.
but they're not.
Yeah.
They're
Very
outperforming
interesting.
these other teams. I I'm renaming this section the grid walk because certainly
Oh,
I can't continue to call it
you're gonna
PTI.
call it PTI? Like they're gonna come after us.
Right, right. Graham Rahal crashes himself out under yellow. Yikes. I don't even know what to say about this. And I have something to say about pretty much everything. Um, you got to move on. Graham says he needs a reset. I'm curious to know what that reset means. Does that mean the 2 weeks between Detroit and Road America, or does that mean sabbatical, gardening
Yeah, I
leave,
don't. Yeah,
right?
yeah, I don't. I just the reaction inside of the media center was quite entertaining when that happened. So,
Oh yeah,
um,
it was
it's
almost like everybody was waiting for it to happen. It wasn't a
yeah.
surprise to anybody.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's the fun part about sitting in there. So you mentioned
Mhm.
earlier we sat in the media center and watched the race. You're watching the race with other people that know the sport, understand the sport, are still fans of the sport as well. It's not like
Yeah.
they're not fans. You wouldn't do that week in and week out if you weren't a fan. So it's interesting to get the vibe and the feel as you're in there and when you're watching it on that TV with all the stats that you mentioned earlier. Just to hear the rumblings that come out of that room is fun to hear. So
Yeah. Like you said on your Power Fifth team, huge kudos to IndyCar, Penske Entertainment, the Detroit Grand Prix Association. You and I walked this track a lot. We talked about it a lot. Um, it is about as fan friendly as you can possibly imagine.
yep,
It really
yep.
is. And I think it's definitely worth the trip up to Detroit. And if you're driving in from Indianapolis, it's not that far a drive. A lot of places to stay in the city or around in the suburbs and things. I think you would really, really enjoy your trip to Detroit for this track. As we continue the grid walk here, why no merch trucks? Right? We saw the Penske merch truck. There was an IndyCar merch truck outside the track, and then the one
Hmm.
which I can never remember the name of, but they have a lot of like the Formula One stuff and older gear
Yeah.
and things like that. They were on the inside, but I was surprised. And I'll even add like food trucks and food choices to this because the city of Detroit has an amazing, diverse culture of food here: Mediterranean, Greek, Mexican, American, fusion, all kinds of
Polish,
different
you name it. Yeah.
Polish. Yeah, right there, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And a lot of different food options and cultures right here in Southeast Michigan. And I got to tell you, I thought the food options were terrible. I didn't think that there was really a lot of good options for
Hmm.
this size of an event. Why it didn't bring more people down here to showcase their recipes was just kind of shocking to me. Um, we talked about streets are bumpy, and I hope they do something about that. But otherwise, I think the track raced well, and I think it was very entertaining to watch. We talked a lot about that. Um, Special thanks to GM for hosting us in their headquarter building. Like Tim mentioned, it's always open. So even if you're just walking along the riverfront or you're walking Jefferson Avenue, um, you pop right in the front door, and they have a beautiful display of cars, current and past. And we
Including Indy
certainly,
cars inside
yeah,
there. And I know
for this
it
event,
wasn't
yeah.
just for the Grand Prix. They're in there
Are they in there
often.
regularly?
Yeah, they
Yeah,
are. Yeah. I think the ones up front were for the Grand Prix, but otherwise the old Indy car that was in there and others that were there, that stuff's there all the time. It's really cool to see.
yeah, that's fun. And appreciate the hospitality of the Detroit Grand Prix Association, allowing us access to the media center. They gave us media credentials right away. They didn't send us
Yeah.
any passive aggressive notes as to why they weren't going to do it. So we appreciate that. We got to sit in on those press conferences. We did live stream those, and that was fun. We'll just have a steady cam next time for this, holder for the iPhone. And Honda won Chevy's home race, which means Chevy's got to win at Mid Ohio.
Yep. So we'll have to remember that when we do our picks
Yup.
there.
Our picks were off, so it goes to show you what we know on that one. So, championship after Detroit, like we mentioned a lot. Palou, 273 points. He's 51 points ahead of second place Marcus Ericsson. Third place Joseph Newgarden. He moves up one spot. Dixon also moves up one spot into fourth place. That's by virtue of Pato O'Ward continuing to lose a little bit composure there. Alexander Rossi moves up sixth place. McLaughlin slips to seventh. Power up one to eighth. Herta also up to ninth. And then Felix Rosenquist makes his first entry into the top 10. Just for perspective, Alex Palou is 125 points ahead of Felix Rosenquist in 10th place. So would you, Tim, put the drivers who are currently second through eighth still in contention for this championship?
Oh, yeah.
It's early. What, 10
Yeah,
races to
and
go?
that's the only
Still
reason it's early. There's a lot can happen. Palou looks really strong though, so
Yeah.
you just got to see what Palou does the rest of the season. So
Yeah.
you're still in contention. You just got to have good results. You can't have anything outside the top 10 going forward if you're in those positions, right? And hope there's some bad luck that goes to other drivers' ways, and then capitalize on those. So but if you're Palou and you're finishing top 3 throughout the rest of the season or up in the top 5, it can be really hard to catch.
Yep. On to Road America. We got a weekend off, and then off to Road America, and I'll be there. I mentioned it 100 times already. It's a
I know
bucket
you're
list
so
for me.
excited.
I cannot be more excited about this. New pavement, and with the field in IndyCar being as competitive as it is, I think it's going to be an amazing race. And it's, start of the third season for the Turn 4 podcast.
Oh,
This,
I didn't
our
think about that.
71st episode, our 72nd episode will be the start of our third season of doing this podcast. And,
Wow.
can't think of a better time to say thank you to everybody who we have new subscribers on YouTube. Sorry we haven't been able to get back to the mailbag and talk about our subscribers. We do appreciate you out there, but we'll, once things calm down a little bit, it's been a very busy stretch here, so we'll get back to that, but we appreciate that. New subscribers on the YouTube channel. A lot of fan engagement, talk to people on Twitter, and all of the engagement. We always try to respond to all that, so we thank you all for that. Timmy, before we go, I got to get your pick. Pole and win for Road America.
I got Award on the pole. I think Pato comes back really strong after the incident he had over at Detroit. So I think he and the team are going to come out the box really strong. For the winner, I have Palou. I got him
Wait
continuing.
a minute. You're taking who?
Alex Palou for the win.
Palou win. Okay.
Yeah.
And who do you have for pole?
For the
Award.
pole, I got Pato Award. I think Alex Palou does what he did in 2021 and wins the race. I think he takes it from a fourth place starting grid spot, and just shows how talented he is and how well the team has come together. They get a few spots on pit stops. They make some on-track passes. I think you got Palou winning this. And my dark horse, I'm going to do dark horse because I know a lot of people like to do dark horse, is his teammate Marcus, the one with last
Armstrong.
name starts with an A. Yeah, Armstrong.
I
think for him, it's a European course. He'll adapt well. He'll do well. And he could be a surprise to everybody this weekend or next weekend. What do you got?
I got Grosjean on pole. He was on pole at Barber, finished second, so he's got to get back to that Romain Grosjean. The walls and everything are very far away from the track at Road America, so that should help. And for my win, Timmy, won Alexander Michael Rossi.
You do?
Yes.
You have him following up his win from 2019.
I do. And who would be my dark horse?
Colton. It's got to be a dark horse. Who?
Colton Herta.
How's that a dark horse? He should be someone's favorite.
Best
All right,
definitely
Herta.
Herta. Hertamania.
Herta.
That's what we got.
You've
Send us your
got
Twitter
two
pics.
current
Who you got?
Andretti drivers and one previous Andretti driver. So this is Andretti party going on for Dan
Andretti
at
party. Everyone's
Road
coming.
America.
Yeah, love it.
We'd
6
love to hear
pages,
what
just
the
as many
listeners
as-
who their picks are for sure. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Send it in to us on Twitter. Give us on our YouTube channel in the comments section there. I'd love to see and hear who you believe will take pole, win, and who your dark horse would be for Road America. That's all I got, Tim.
That's all I got. Great show. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, man. And Charlie Mack, I know you're listening. I'll see you in a couple weeks.
Ha. Awesome.